Hello. Hello and welcome to Starman and the Boomer. We are back at it again. Apologies for the repeated delays of the stream. This is a topic we really wanted to cover, but I've been very, very busy in my personal life, and so has Trig. So we actually have lives outside the internet. It's amazing, I know.
It's lies and misdirection. But yes,
Lies and slander, yes.
yes, we have. Yeah, you've had big stuff happening last week. So yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get to do what we were going to do today or last week. We are now doing now. But
Yes, we are.
And things are getting spicy today as well.
Yeah, yes.
Forever Wars may well be on the restart after what Biden has been saying today. But yes, that is just minor. We're going to go through the history of it, and we can all look forward to more of the same if the same psychopaths remain in charge. And
oh yes, there may be. Before we do a little of the normal preamble, we prefer to take donations through Streamlabs. There is a pinned comment with it in. It's also in the description. We are fully monetized on YouTube. I'm actually getting memberships set up currently. They're currently in the approval process, and I'll probably get those finished for next week. I will announce them for probably next week's stream. But it's a case of we do get revenue through YouTube, but YouTube takes 30%. Then Uncle Sam also now takes 30% because of the new YouTube tax rules. It doesn't figure out much worse than it would do in the UK tax rules, but still, a cut is heavily taken directly from our YouTube revenue. So if you guys do want to throw money at us through Streamlabs, we'll make sure that more of it gets to us. So that's the better way of doing it.
Yes, because I was going to say I've just checked the stream and I'm actually looking at Theresa May in an advert at the moment. So there's good news and bad news there. I've had to see Theresa May, but it is an advert for our channel. So, well done us, I guess. Let's see how long the old monetization lasts. I'm just going to let this advert play because, that 0.0005% or pence or whatever that ad's worth is, it all adds up.
It does all add up, yes. I've turned on auto ads for the channel. I don't know if that's working or not. I'm going to go through and manually redo the ads. So do let us know in the comments if you are seeing ads, if you're not seeing ads, if you're, if there's too many ads in the videos, I will try and manually sort that. I hate inconvenient mid-rolls. So if there's too many mid-rolls going on in our stream VODs, do let us know and I can and will adjust that. That's kind of just normal channel stuff. But yeah. Fuck, this is a topic I've had a lot of people be quite excited about. So, I don't know, Trig, I know you've got a few rabbit holes to go down, but here we are talking about the Forever Wars. Indeed,
the Forever Wars. And what might be causing those Forever Wars, etc. And it sort of goes back quite a way, actually. Well, I mean, we're not going to go all the way back because that would take us back to people going, what's this black sticky stuff coming out of the ground?
What's this merchant banking happening in Europe, huh?
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know, a history of finance and warfare might be a hell of a stream to do, but I don't know if that'll get us taken down or not. Because the word Rothschild might come up a few times.
Rothschild, Rockefeller, many others. You know what? That's not one stream either. The history of international financing and warfare. Oh God, that's a that's a year's worth of talk there. That's people have written books upon books upon books about that. So we could have a bash, I guess. I mean, I've certainly got enough books on that type of nonsense. Although.
I will say, Bill B in the chat, that's a good comment. That's a funny comment. I like the banter, and it's a shame that YouTube will probably flag that up and it won't be seen by anyone or it's not seen in the VOD. I try and keep on the fire hose of comments, but a lot of people probably just won't see that. I'm not reading it on stream. I like it when people give content creators a hard time, obviously in good humor, and I hate when people can't tell what banter is. So yeah, it's. I miss the old internet. I really fucking do. Oh, but yeah, that would be more than one stream, definitely. Undoubtedly.
Not off. That would also mean having to read that Henry Kissinger book I've got on my bookshelf, which I've been meaning to. Know your enemies and all that, but I just can't bring myself to read that crap.
Yeah, I don't know. It's there's a lot. I don't. There's a lot of getting black pilled. I think a lot of people have been falling into black pill traps, and don't do that again. This isn't another black pill stream. This is really just it's a real history of the continuation of power through seemingly different administrations. Is kind of the big takeaway here.
That's right.
I also was flexing my thumbnail game earlier to especially V because he makes terrible thumbnails.
Doesn't he?
And yeah, it's I don't know. I quite like the way this one looks. I think it's one of my best. The rainbow helicopter, the LGBT plus trans flag, and where Black Lives Matter wiped his ass on it, like the Pan-African fucking LGBT. God, that cringe. It syncs up with the bomb fins so well. I don't know, man. I hate to toot my own horn, but the more David D's my thumbnails get, I think the better. That's where I'm kind of going with this. I'm hoping to make them as David D's as possible. God rest his zombie bones.
Rest in peace, David D's. The CIA stole his shoes one too many times.
Yeah, the CIA stealing his shoes in heaven now.
Oh, bless him. He wasn't he like was it Sesame Street or something like that originally? Artist?
Yeah, he was I think he did like background art for quite a few people. I've heard Disney mentioned, but I've never seen verification of that.
And then woof, off the rails. In a wonderful and marvelous way.
I kind of feel sorry. I don't know. Again, it's a bit more of a navigating the rabbit hole kind of thing. But it's a case of I don't know, man. It's not something that I would want to deal with in terms of like the more paranoid schizophrenia sides of it.
Yeah. I enjoy his art. It's a shame what happened to him, but I think he was a bit boomer experienced internet and went mad.
It very much is, yes. It's kind of like the Q stuff, but we're not talking about that today. Go and watch our Navigating the Rabbit Hole one, where we're here for the Forever Wars, and oh boy, have they gone on forever.
And do not look like they're going to stop anytime soon either.
Oh no, they do not. I think that's really what sparked this stream. I think is the whole Biden attack on Syria, the day one essentially rolling out of forces into Syria, the intensified bombings. Really, it's like back to business as usual.
Yep. Now he's provoking Putin and calling him a killer, which is little. I mean, world leaders, country leaders tend to have to get their hands a little dirty in that type of thing anyway, but I suspect Biden's had his hand in dropping more bombs and killing more people than Putin. It's just a rough guess there. I mean...
Listen here, Jack. I have drone strike more desert children than you have, Putin. Dude, it's like a wrestling call out. That's what we need. We need someone to deep fake... We need to deep fake fucking Putin.
WWE.
Deep fake fucking Joe Biden.
WWE.
WWE cutting fucking promos out there, yeah.
Macho Man Randy Savage versus Biden versus Putin kind of esque would be glorious. Yeah, Putin's actually said, yeah, go on then, I'll have a debate with you live. Let's do this.
Oh man, that'd be fun. I don't know. We're probably not going to talk about it today, but the whole CGI Biden thing was hilarious. I'll probably be talking about that on Friday when we redo the whole seal of approval that ended up getting cancelled yesterday because Rose got quite a bad migraine, unfortunately.
Yes, is she feeling better? Do you know?
I think she is feeling better today. Yes.
Good. Good.
I've not had a ow my head from her, so I kind of assume so. But yeah, it's. Oh man, I think, like I said, if we were really going to do the whole thing, we'd have to start really far back. But I think a good jumping off point is the Cold War policy that preceded the Forever Wars.
Yes,
because that's something I know you have a lot of experience with, being alive longer than I have as well, Mr. Boomer.
I was only there for the end of the Cold War, and I was only very little. But yeah, no, I was around in the 70s and 80s, and I do remember the Cold War. I do remember things like Well, was it Rambo? Was it Rambo 3 or 4? Which was the one he was in? He was in Afghanistan fighting alongside the heroic Taliban, helping them to kick out the evil Ruskies out of Afghanistan because the Russians were
that was like Rambo 4, wasn't it?
horrendously. Yes, that's right. And these days you look at it and you're like, those guys are now being called terrorists, and yeah, because this is what was happening is back there in the Cold War. There was squabbling on various fronts and proxy wars, and Afghanistan was one of those theaters. And the reasons for that, I can cover in a minute. I have maps of that area, and certain structures that were being planned to be built through those areas, and are still being planned, and actually have been built. Oil pipelines, gas pipelines, etc. It wasn't just all about poppies and opium, although that was also some of it, because the CIA really wanted to get their hands on some of that good heroin. But yeah, no, that was it. Russia was in Afghanistan. They were there fighting the Afghanis, and America and England was pumping huge amounts of resources, equipment, weapons, training into people in Afghanistan. Some of those people have names that you might have heard before. A very famous CIA operative and was a guy called Osama bin Laden, who was trained up to go and fight the Russians, and then off they went, kicked the Russians, made the Russians bleed like crazy.
They really did, yes. The as it says in like Rocky IV, it's the brave Mujahideen protecting their land. Oh man.
Yep, and lo and behold, yes, they were brave. They were protecting their land. This is actually one of the cases where, yeah, they were protecting their land. They were being attacked. They'd been had an invading force in there who were essentially telling them how to run their lives. And yeah, Western forces provided them Stinger missiles to blow their helicopters up, and weapons and all sorts of stuff. And after years of being in Afghanistan, Russia finally went, this is costing us a fortune, guys. We're getting out of here. We're leaving. It's not worth it. The oil pipeline, we're going to have to leave alone and leave that behind. And off they went. And then it didn't feel like very long until suddenly America and England were like, hey, I know, guys, let's invade Afghanistan. And guess what's fucking happened? It's exactly the same thing all over again, as if it would change. But I'm jumping ahead. Essentially, yeah, to cover the history of the Forever Wars, to cover the Cold War politics, everything, it all boils down to the word I'm going to be saying a hell of a lot, and if you get bored of it, I apologize, but oil fucking everywhere, all over the Middle East, and oil pipelines pumping oil out of the Middle East, essentially to cover. There's 3 or 4 main oil fields in the world. There's America, tons of it in Texas and various other places, Pennsylvania, etc.
Black gold,
Texas tea, etc. There's a ton of it in the Middle East in various places, and there is a ton of it under the Caucasus Mountains in southern Russia. And this goes back to, we know that the Germans were pushing towards that area during the Second World War and trying to take the Caucasus oil. Now, that oil, at the present moment, right now, is being pumped from Russia into Europe. And Europe is buying vast amounts of that oil. It fuels Germany. And it always has done. And Europe, being a massive buyer of oil and power, people wanted to get in on that. And they wanted to cut Russia out of it, especially considering, and I'm going to go way, way back here, Shell and Dutch oil, Royal Dutch, made their money, made their initial name in oil by digging up oil in Russia before the Communist Revolution. When the Communist Revolution happened, bang, that collapsed. All of their holdings, Royal Dutch and Shell had to form to make their a merge to survive against the Americans. And from that moment onwards, there's been a push to cut those Russian oil fields out from supplying Europe. And this is pretty much what it all boils down to, is do you pump oil through the Middle East and through the Caucasus, through Russian, into Europe, or do you pump it through Turkey, through Greece, and into Europe that way? And of course, if you're going to pump it through Turkey and Greece, you've got to pump it through Syria.
Yes, you do. It's real
Israel.
pipeline.
And yeah, if you want to go the other way around, if you're the Russians and you want to pump it from Pakistan up through Russia, you want to go through Afghanistan. And those are some really freaking key names here. And in fact, let me see if I can find a good map for you here. I'm just gonna not make a mess of it as I normally do. Here's a pretty decent map of this whole area. It's certainly not actually Afghanistan, but you can see Afghanistan on the far right there. You've got Pakistan, you've got Afghanistan, you've got Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, all going round the outside of Iran, round the other side of the Caspian Sea, up through Kazakhstan and up into what is southern Russia.
Yes.
As you can see on this map, we've got lots of oil pipelines, lots of gas pipelines, all over the place. The dotted ones are under construction. And those dotted ones are under construction, as you can see there, through Turkey, into Georgia, and supplying Russia there, and gas pipelines going off up into Bulgaria and into Greece. Which is another interest. I've often suspected that Greece, and you mentioned this earlier, this might be why Greece got brought into the EU.
Possibly.
Because,
like I said, there's definitely some strong arming going on there. Again, that's a little bit out in the weeds with what we're talking about, but there is definitely a Greek angle to a lot of this.
Yep.
In that, yeah, we're taking you through the educational stuff here. This is really the driving force behind why the Middle East is so important to both the US and Russia, and why it was so important to the Soviets and the US, which is why, I know we kind of touched on it a little bit, in the 1950s and 60s, what America did was go around and install strongmen in places like, well, Iraq, like Saddam Hussein. He was their guy for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
He was not Russia's guy, he was their guy. There was also,
he was our guy. He was England's guy. Iraq.
Oh yes, sorry.
Iraq and pre-1970s Iran. They were really big on England and France. They thought we were great. We were really good friends with those guys. England and France, Iraq and Iran, and buddies. And even in Saudi Arabia, the king, what's his name? Saud. I'll remember his first name in a minute. It'll come to me at an appropriate time. He actually asked the British consulate back in the 1950s whether or not he should take the offer from America, because America wanted to buy some land and prospect for oil in Saudi Arabia, and the English consulate, a guy called Ryan, I think it was, went, yeah, sure, by all means, let them dig over there. There's no oil over there, whatever. And, well, boy, was that a mistake, because that could have been England's oil.
Yes, it could have been. There's a lot of stuff like that, though, where people have realized, like, mistakes of empire a bit too late, essentially. Mm-hmm. But, again, a lot of that is trying to reclaim that glory, really. There's a huge amount of stuff out there where they're just like, you know what, all that stuff we ended up ignoring in the early 1900s, maybe we should have taken that. But yeah, there's the problem with oil is the problem with a lot of other stuff is that it's only really valuable because of false scarcity.
Yeah.
They've been talking about running out of oil since the OPEC crisis in the 70s.
Oh, it's even further back than that. I'm
going to say, yeah, but it's like a fever pitch. They've been talking about running out of oil since the 70s. It's been like an imminent... They always say 20... It's like global warming. Mm-hmm. You know, it's always 25 years in the future, it's all going to be gone. Yep. And that's been going on continuously. They've always basically said that. Although with global warming, it seems to be like a 5-year cycle now, you know, to save the world.
Yep.
It gets even more immediate.
We were taught in the late 1970s, early 1980s, at school, that the North Sea oil and North Sea gas would be running out within 15 to 25 years. And they never stopped, they never updated that date, because I remember hearing it again at the end of the 80s, about 25 years. And I was like that going, it's been 10 years since you last said that. And they're still opening fields in the North Sea.
Yeah, they are.
And there's a reason for that, because were you party to this? Because I know someone that we know who has worked in oil fields underwater has said that they find something quite interesting when they dig into oil fields underwater, is that after they've capped it and they've gone, this is run out, this is empty now, we've run out, so we're going to cap it so it doesn't leak, and we're going to go and open up another oil field. They go back 5 years later, and it's refilled itself.
Yes, because it seeps out of the rock.
Yeah.
That's how oil fields work.
Yeah. So a lot of these underwater oil fields, a lot of these oil fields on land as well, if you leave them for a bit, they kind of refill. So I think what was it, the last time I looked at actual figures, I think America has got something close to a couple of 100 years supply of oil. Just in tanks that they've already pumped out, that they're just sitting on. They daren't release as reserves. The reason why we're pumping oil out of the Middle East so much at the moment is because, well, we'd rather pump their oil out than and use that than, well, use the American oil or use English oil. And you know what? It's the thing is last year when the oil price went negative is actually possibly the first time in a long time that the oil price has actually been reflected as actually what it is. We have oceans of this stuff. The actual real cost is not in pumping it out of the ground and in shipping it. The actual stuff itself, we've got so much of it that it is almost worthless. And it is as simple as that. We should be paying virtually nothing for the petrol in our cars, apart from the, how to refine it and transport it. The stuff, the raw material, we have thousands of years of supply, and we don't even need that because we've got other energy sources around the corner, like nuclear power. That, nuclear power, fusion power, etc., will all be online well within the time we've got for oil. And we're always going to want oil anyway. As planes run really well on it. It's brilliant.
They do, yeah.
It's brilliant as a propulsion system. It's brilliant as a fuel source. It is the most energy-dense stuff out there, just about.
It is, yes. It's very, very good.
Great stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And it can be burned cleanly as well. Very easily. But, shall we start with... Shall we go back to 1991? Because
we should do, yes.
Because going back to 1991... I was a young trig, was at school.
Just a young trig with a quick fuse, eh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
Yeah, a hair trig. Sitting at school, listening to the radio every day whilst the Iraq War cracked off. Iraq had charged into Kuwait for... It just seemed like no one really knew why Iraq had charged into Kuwait. Because
they just did, yeah. They just kind of did it.
I mean, Iraq's fairly wealthy. It had got everything going for it. Kuwait's this tiny little sort of province just to the south of it. And there was all sorts of stories of soldiers butchering children in hospitals, and it was absolutely vital that the Western world come to Saudi Arabia's aid. I mean, Kuwait's aid. Because that was the real reason. The real reason we all charged in there was because, oh my god, Saudi Arabia might be in danger. Iraq had got probably the biggest and most powerful army in the Middle East at that point in time. The Republican Guard, their tank units were worthy of note, to say the least. Iran and Iraq had been warring for years and had really much ground to a standstill. We'd seen all sorts of messes happening there, and that's a whole other story. Ayatollah being installed, radical Islam, Shia. Was it Shia? No, it was Sunni in Iran, wasn't it? Is it sunny in
Yeah, it
Iran?
was.
Is it sunny in Iran?
Sunny and Share, yeah.
Sunny and yeah, literally. Constantly fighting. And yeah, no. So Saudi Arabia went help, Western powers. Iraq is looking like they could march on Saudi Arabia, which of course Saudi Arabia is well aware of how easy that is to happen because that's how Saudi Arabia formed in the first place. House of Saud enlisted a whole bunch of Wahhabists and they raped and pillaged their way around Saudi Arabia. They married any desert princesses they could find to bond the whole place together. And that had only happened, 50, 60 years beforehand, to be perfectly honest. It really wasn't a long time. It was certainly well within people's memories. So suddenly seeing Iraqi tanks charging into Kuwait, yeah, same thing might happen again. And that affected where we would get our oil from. So we all charged over there. And I sat there listening because I had relatives in the armed forces, and I listened every single night to those sorties flying over there and knocking the living daylights out of this country. Their defenses were not up to fighting a Western world. I don't think Iraq was expecting America to actually or England to
No, I don't think they were.
Really don't, because it took them by surprise. You know, they had been big friends, but
They had been the big friend, yes. But like I said, a lot of the stuff we see now, though, it's really a afterthought, kind of a shadow of what was done to quote unquote win the Cold War. The whole shape of the Middle East and the way they found it and all of that is predicated on kind of the downfall of these strongmen. But that's kind of what we're going for here. The strategic importance of that and the interpolitical stuff really is an affectation of the contest between the West and the USSR, and then later is a conflict between the West and the puppets they kind of put in place that they lost control of, and a resurgent kind of Putin-backed Russia. It's a very, very you have to understand the context of what was happening, because there was a lot of memory holding. Like I said, even during Gulf War I, people didn't mention the fact that Saddam Hussein was a Ba'athist, and essentially they'd been put in by the British, but the British had kind of lost control of them with the whole pan-Arab Marxism thing.
Yep.
Because the whole Baathism thing was kind of not hilarious, but it all fell apart very quickly because Iraq and Iran couldn't agree with each other, and there was no real pan-Arab unity.
Oh God, never has been. Never has been. No, they're warring tribes. They always have been, and well, they still are, really, aren't they? Let's be fair.
Yes, they are. Very, very, very much so. They are warring tribes. A quick note on donations and stuff. I haven't been able to see any because my Google account seems to have gone funny with Streamlabs, and I currently cannot get in. I've been trying to get into the back end this whole time, and it's just not having it. So I'm going to have to kajiggle with that later on. If you do want to donate, please. Actually, I know we talked about donating through Streamlabs. This stream, maybe send a super chat. And if you have donated in Streamlabs already, give me a note in the chat and say how much you donated, and I'll read those out, because I generally will see it. And if you can check your PayPal just to see if we have got any.
I will have a look in a minute. Yep.
Yeah. It's just a case of my Google account has decided to fuck me over. It's not accepting its own security codes with me. So you might want to look at alternate donations just this stream. I'll have that working for next stream though. That's just Google being shite. But yeah,
I think I've heard any audio
bidding,
cues.
so we've probably not had any yet.
But,
yeah. Like I said though, guys, that is the preferred method usually when I can fucking get it. Again, it wouldn't be a Starman on the boomer without a small amount of boomerism, and that's kind of my mess up here. But I've got I think I know how to sort it. It's just going to take time, and I don't want to do it whilst attempting to be entertaining on stream. But I think we've kind of taken up the first half hour really with this whole preamble. We could do with really moving on to the real meat and potatoes of what started happening in the, let's say, the retconning of the original kind of Gulf conflicts. It's like the retconning of the retcon. if Gulf War One was like the retconning of the Cold War, then like the Iraq War and the Afghan War were kind of retconnings of the original Gulf War in certain ways.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean that's it. We had relative peace for the 90s. I mean, America. When I say relative peace, America was bombing Iraq installations daily almost. After Gulf War One, there was no fly zones. There was, you've moved something slightly, so we're going to blow it up. And of course, there was the constant. We think you might have weapons of mass destruction, so we're going to send somebody in to observe stuff. Good old Hans Bricks was marching
Fuck
around.
you, Hans Bricks.
Exactly. I always found it interesting that they'd got a guy called Hans looking for arms. But that's just me being a boomer.
No, Mr. Trigg, I am an excellent thief. Die Hard's a great movie. Yeah, but I don't know. It's a before I speed past this too fast. Is there anything else you want to really talk about with the whole Gulf War One era of all of this?
Gulf War One era, it seemed fairly cut and dried. From my point of view, the propaganda was hilarious. By the way, back then,
there was a huge amount of jingoism.
All the newspapers, all British newspapers and American newspapers, they were all right on board. Let's blow the crap out of these towel heads. You'd got camels with Saddam Hussein hitting them in the nuts with a hammer, firing a scud out. There was racism galore. It was hilarious. Some of the crap that was coming out. There was every single old stereotype of Arabs looking sinister and evil. They were being sold on t-shirts. They were being given to kids. This was the early 90s, and you could, it was great. Bad guys were bad guys, and we made them look bad.
So what you're saying is bomb Saddam was unironically what it was.
Absolutely, and people were really down with that, and it is really, the culture has changed so much since then. And
the culture has, but the rhetoric in many ways kind of hasn't.
No, I know.
It's interesting. We'll get to that later, but yeah, it is interesting. And I will also say, just remember that people, Gaddafi, Saddam, the Shah era Iran, all of these governments were put in place by either the British or the Americans.
Yeah, or a European country of some sort.
Or a European country of some sort. The French are involved in there in some ways with Algeria and North Africa.
Yep. And they were all hard bastards. But the thing is, you needed a hard bastard in these countries because they were so prone to being, as I said earlier, warring tribes that would go out there and they would just cause havoc. And we've seen it before, you believe in the wrong version of Islam, off with your head, or rapes galore, or whatever. And it's always been the same. And Iraq went, right, okay, we've got Saddam in. If you play out, if you mess about, he'll dip you in acid. And it's the same sort of thing was going off in Libya. These people. I always quite liked Gaddafi's sense of big shades, lots of medals.
He got a gold-plated desert, like nickel-plated desert eagle shit.
We had despots that looked like despots back then. There was always big shades, big moustaches. When
despots were despots,
golds. I mean, it was a bit camp. But it was macho.
It was very camp, yeah.
It was macho camp as hell, and it was great fun to look at because you could point and laugh and go, "Oh my god, that guy has got to be a bad guy." Look at the shades and the gold and the medals and the
yeah.
It was brilliant. You could spot him a mile off who was the psychopathic dictator, but they're all our guys, sort of, and they all got a bit out of control, or did they?
Well, they were doing what they were meant to do, really, in many ways.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the big defining event, I'll put something in stream resources for you for the next bit. But I'll before we get on to the big defining event that changes this entire ethos. What really happened was they brought the strongmen back into line, kind of disavowed them a bit, but left them in place in a very weakened capacity. Is what happened. The Gaddafis, the Saddams, they were slapped around a bit, and they were told to fuck off, basically, with this whole pan-Arab nationalism and to not get too, really to know their place. But the 90s, you're right, was kind of a holding pattern in that there was violence going on, there was bombing going on, but there was nothing like the First Gulf War. There was the Kosovo campaigns, there was still a lot of extension of American power. The idea of the bloodless Clinton administration is a myth. But that's really what was kind of going on there. And the ethos was that these people, they keep the shit at shoe level.
Yep, and meanwhile, all that was going off, a fairly mild-mannered chap from Syria was studying to be a dentist in London and meeting a nice British lady, and eventually took her back home and married her in his home country of Syria. And, suddenly became the leader of Syria. That was Bashar al-Assad in the 90s. And
yeah, he was.
He was our friend. He was, in Gulf War 1. In fact, if anyone's read Bravo 20, you will notice in there that when they have to run for a friendly territory after they're busted, they don't run to Saudi Arabia. They don't run to Iraq. They don't even run to Turkey. They run to Syria because they know that's the safe haven for the Brits to go to. Yeah. Yep. That was the 90s. Syria was our friend. Yeah, Iraq was now no longer our friend, but Syria was our ally over there, as well as Saudi.
Yeah, listen, chat there. It is. It really was just a case of the 90s, was them getting a rolled-up newsprint going, bang, dictators, bang, back in your boxes. But
absolutely.
Then something happened which changed everything. If you want to get the image up there.
Are we talking about our Lord and Saviour Building 7 by any chance?
Well, they're factored into it, but it's more the entire event of 9/11.
Yes.
I don't know. We need some sort of 9/11 button somewhere.
I do. We do.
This stream is being crashed into the first tower and the second tower. That's where we're going here. There's going to be our passports in the rubble. Completely unburned. Yes, never 7 get. Never 7 get.
Saudi passports, by the way.
Saudi passports.
The only country in the Middle East we didn't invade are the ones where those passports were from. Just
throwing that out there, guys. Throwing that out there.
I seem to have dropped that out in the open, but yeah. Anyway, cough. Yes, and suddenly George Bush Jr. decided to carry on his dad's work and went, you know what, my dad didn't actually get that Saddam guy, and he was definitely the guy that did this 9/11 thing. And
he did a bad 9/11.
Yeah.
A bunch of Saudis blew up our building. Let's invade Afghanistan. What?
Yeah, because that was it. It was Osama bin Laden who was being helped by Saddam. Of course he was. No, he wasn't. Actually, Saddam Hussein was kicking the ass out of Al Qaeda and stuff like that, and keeping it out of Iraq. Always has been. But no, let's charge into Afghanistan because that's always a good idea.
Do you want to put my other meme up there, Trig? I have another 9/11 meme I wanted to put on for this event.
Oh no! Let me find it. Hold on a second. Where did I put it? Where did I put it? I put it here.
Oh dear. I don't know. I have somewhere a half-finished lecture about memes I was going to do at one of Sargon's live shows, which is a large section of it is why 9/11 memes are inherently funny. Because it's one of our last universal cultural touchstones, and you can tell a 9/11 meme kind of at a glance. Saudi Arabia did 7/11. They got us a big gulp, guys. They got us a big gulp of terrorism. Oh dear me. But yeah, it's kind of interesting because as you all, I know it's like baby's first Middle East fact, but as we went through in our preamble there. The Mujahideen were the brave heroes that the Americans were backing against the Russians. And supposedly Afghanistan, well, it's a quagmire. The British couldn't do it, the Soviets couldn't do it, and now the Americans thought they could do it. That was kind of the big thing of it. They really, it's almost like they willfully, in hindsight, it's like they did it on purpose. They picked, I think, the worst country, possibly outside of Somalia, for a large kind of mechanized army to invade. It was almost like it was it was almost like it was hand-picked.
oh, there we are. Thank you for that. Yes, that's...
it's Sandy Vietnam, basically. It's a place that is not conducive to mechanized warfare.
It's not. It's not
it is
good
not
for
conducive.
mechanized warfare. It's full of rocks. It's full of holes in the ground, and it's also full of anti-aircraft missiles that we sold them. And it's full of all sorts, and as a result, Afghanistan is an absolute hellhole. And it's also worth noting, if you go back in time, right, if you go back as almost as far as we've got recorded history, right, Alexander the Great was turned back in Afghanistan. Afghanistan has broken every single civilization and every great empire that's gone into Afghanistan has shortly afterwards been pretty much destroyed by the whole experience.
Yeah, it's become self-perpetuating too. The terrain isn't conducive. It's an awkward geographical location. There aren't many resources. It's very open but very hilly. It is basically the perfect place for nomadic tribesmen to defend. And because of that, Afghanistan is full of nomadic tribesmen who know how to defend the area, and you quite would literally have to cleanse them all in some kind of genocide to win. By the way, the title of the image you were seeing earlier is called "Here Comes the Aeroplane." It's I don't know. It's one of my stupider memes because it's a spoonful of baby food. But I don't know. Sometimes you want some surreal and silly 9/11 memes. But yeah, the first and this is the thing. The opening salvo in the modern remake of the Forever Wars was Afghanistan, and we're still there. We're still there, 21 years later.
And we will always be there until we get out, until we realise it's a bad idea, and to leave them alone. Leave them to... I mean, I'm not saying I'm particularly in favour of a lot of their culture, etc. There's some horrendous thing, but it's not a good place to go in with troops. They were fighting the Russians, and they're now fighting, the Western forces with this 100-year-old rifles and making a mess of people. People are being shot by rifles that were pre-First World War.
Yeah, there's people sniping people with black powder rifles, like the equivalent of Sharps rifles, almost like American Civil War technology.
Yeah.
They have a great legacy of Martini Henrys left over from the British as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of single loading rifles, a lot of falling block rifles. That's what a lot of them really were fighting the Mujahideen with as well. So the Mujahideen were fighting the Soviets with.
Yeah.
Because before they could steal Soviet arms, which they did in droves, and still had both Soviet and American arms during the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan. They kept all of that stuff. Yeah, a gun is a gun, essentially. It's not something that goes away. It's something that's persistent. And like I said, in retrospect, I think they deliberately chose Afghanistan not just because Osama bin Laden was there, with the whole link to 9/11. Let's go get Saddam by putting our troops in harm's way. Let's go teach those terrorists a lesson by putting a large amount of our armed forces within their sights. That seems like a great idea. But. God damn it, Trig. That's a classic as well. That is a classic as well.
Sorry.
I would be amazed if this stream gets monetized. I will laugh my ass off if I see that little green circle, because we are doing everything in our power to make sure that's never going to happen.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. I'm gonna leave my memes alone though, because most of them will get us demonetized.
We've seen the Forever Wars perpetuate. We've seen Bush Senior. We've seen Clinton, and people again lying through their teeth about his administration. He did a lot of the no-fly zone shit. He did a lot of the shit in Serbia, Kosovo, and all that. He was still projecting U.S. power. Now we're on to Bush Jr. We're on to the Bush administration.
Yep.
And the administration that I think, controversially, I would say, unfairly gets blamed for the Forever Wars, because they were the ones who invaded Iraq and Afghanistan, but they weren't the ones who made the decisions to stay there all this time. We're fast-forwarding a bit here, but spoiler alert, we're still there.
Yeah.
Through the Obama administration, through the Trump administration, despite him very vocally and actively trying to get them out, and now into the Biden administration. A lot of people talked about Bush's wars. It's the Bush-Blair, it's the neocons. But, Blair wasn't a neocon. He was essentially a neolib. He was essentially lockstep with what someone like Biden would want.
But Obama dropped more bombs on the Middle East than Bush did. You know that?
Yes, I know that. We're going to get onto that later. But yeah, I think everyone is quite well versed, really, in the surface level stuff of the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq. The rhetoric in Afghanistan was, let's go get Osama bin Laden, and it wasn't. Let's not forget that Afghanistan is not actually an American war. It's a UN endorsed NATO war, which is the funny thing. It's one of the few operations in this that had a veneer of internationalism. So all those people who talk about globalism being the key to peacekeeping and, preventing things like the forever wars, no. There were things like Japanese troops in Afghanistan. There were things like Belgians and Dutch troops. Because the Dutch, it was only a couple of years ago when they finally pulled out the last of their troops. This was a massive international coalition that went into the Afghanistan quagmire with no real plan. With no plan for ruling after they thought they could defeat the Taliban in a traditional land war, which is retarded because of what the Soviets had just been through, about a decade earlier. And they also went in there without tanks in many cases. Here's something that baffled me, and here's something that you probably will not have realized. None of the coalition forces, outside of very specific circumstances in Afghanistan, used tanks. And they did that for optics reasons. They did that because they didn't want to look like an invading and occupying force. And that left them open to a lot of these roadside bombs. That's why you get things like the MRVs and the Bradley fighting vehicles. These things wouldn't need to exist without that PR policy of not using tanks in Afghanistan and certain parts of Iraq.
Yeah.
Which blew my fucking mind when I learned that. Because if you remember a few years ago, well, not a few years ago, it was more than a decade ago now, but there was all the controversy about the British soldiers dying to improvise explosive devices because they were in unarmored snatched Land Rovers. Yeah.
Yeah. There is something more, though. Those tanks are horrendous in Afghanistan. They do not work very well. The terrain is bad for them. Big freaking rocks all over the place. You end up shedding tracks. You end up getting grounded. You end up having to go round and get funneled into sort of bottlenecks. The Russians found this. They found their tanks getting eaten alive by the Taliban. Just literally going, oh, well, the only place they can get a tank through here is through that little bit there, so we're just going to stick some mines there. Bang.
Yeah.
Nightmare. And IEDs, good. It's so freaking easy to build an explosive that will blow up a Land Rover, and the moment it gets near, and you just dig it into the ground and bury it, and either have someone remote detonate it or have a detonator there. They're very, very easy to do. To be honest, almost anybody's probably got the material in their kitchen to make these things. It really is. It's just, I say thank God. I mean, some people know how to build these things, some people don't. But the technology is not. I mean, literally, you've got people in Afghanistan in caves putting together stuff that can blow up tanks and blow up vehicles. It is really easy to do this stuff. Unfortunately, people don't do it in the Western world. Thankfully, we're not that disgruntled. No one's invading us. No one's oppressing us and locking us into our house and keeping us. Oh wait. No, but that's another stream. That's a different meeting down at the docks later.
Well, I think we may have got some donations. I'm looking at my weekly. There's Scouse Fish, I think, that donated $7, and Coventry 301 that donated $3.
Oh, yes.
I can't read your messages right now. I'm locked out of Streamlabs, but I will give you a quick shout out there. And if you want to put your messages in chat or message me on Discord, I will read out what you put there.
I do see a
thank you for the
super
donations, guys. And like I said, I'm having to kind of do a bit of a workaround here until I can sort out my the linking of my Google account to Streamlabs.
We do,
and
look
also
like
we
we've
have
had
a donation.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I said we have had a super chat, I believe. Yes, thumbs up for the Sharp reference. Yes,
we've got one from Namazed talking about Sharp as well. Just discovered it in 2020. Yes, it is. I also was making a reference to, like, the Sharps rifles of, like, the American Civil War too. But yeah, it is like a war of, Napoleonic War technology. Some of the Mujahideen were using. Sorry to interrupt you there, Trig.
It's all right. I was just going to say, Sharp is the only TV series where Sean Bean doesn't die.
Yes.
Spoiler.
Yes.
It's literally the only time I've ever seen him in TV where he's not dead within 2 or 3 episodes, and it was not bad, not bad TV series. Quite fun. Big,
It is rather fun, yeah.
Very, very popular with the housewives, I believe that was when it was, first came
Sharp
out.
was, yeah.
Yes. But great fun.
But yeah, we were the whole Afghanistan thing again, international coalition, not technically a purely American war, as it is often portrayed to be. It is really a result of internationalism. It's one step away from being a parade of blue hats.
But as you can see from here, right? This is the thing. If you look at the map that I've got up here, blue line equals proposed oil pipeline, yellow line or orange line equals proposed gas pipeline. Look at what's running through the center of Afghanistan. And look where they go. That's right, Afghanistan has, for the longest time, they've been wanting to pump oil from India, from Pakistan, through Afghanistan, up through to the Caspian Sea, and into southern Russia. And then, after Russia got out of that, they wanted to pump it over to the west, and down through Iran, through Iraq, through Turkey, and up through Greece, and off that way. This is another...
All down through Pakistan and into the Arabian Sea with friendly countries like Saudi Arabia and Oman, and the Emirates down there. Really, like I said, it really is... I know the whole war for oil thing is a tired cliche at this point, but it's
not a cliche. True. And also, no. I mean, Belt and Road, China is sat there over the right, being very, very quiet. Big yellow, big orange pipeline proposed all the way through via Afghanistan again. It's all part of the same one world, new world order, great reset, globalist nightmare. And Afghanistan is a cornerstone to that, always has been. And that's why it's been fought over so much for the last 30, 40, 50, 100 years, whatever. And it's also kind of why poor old Syria ended up in the similar mess, because that too has had oil pipelines proposed through it. But I'm jumping ahead. Shall we hit? Have we hit Gulf War II yet at this point? I suppose we have.
We're about to. We've just talked about the war in Afghanistan. We're about to hit Gulf War II Electric Boogaloo, because here's where things start to get very, very interesting. Because this is the war that has the most drummed up pretext. You can kind of, if you squint, see the mission in Afghanistan. For similar reasons, they justify the mission in Somalia, which is bringing government to a failed state. Holo 1916 donated there. Sorry, I can't see your message, so please do put it in chat. But thank you for your donation. I will try and catch those as they're coming in.
I'm gonna find a better map for this bit.
But yeah. But yeah, we are seeing here again. If you squint, you can kind of see the justification for the invasion of Afghanistan, because it comes with the same baggage of civilizing and all that, and it's got imperial overtones to it in certain ways, but it had, again, the veneer of internationalism, and it also had the veneer of stabilizing a failed state ruled by, what they consider a terrorist militia. They at the time were very much putting forward the theory that Osama bin Laden was in Afghanistan. Spoiler alert, he was in Pakistan the whole time.
Our ally, Pakistan.
Our ally, yes, our greatest ally.
Yeah. Yes, he was there hiding out in Pakistan. So after we'd charged into Afghanistan looking for someone that wasn't there because he was in Pakistan, we decided, you know what? It was that pesky Saddam. We hadn't finished him off last time. We'll finish him off this time.
We don't have any footage to hand. I couldn't. Unfortunately, a lot of it's scrubbed. I couldn't find a lot of it on the internet. But if you were around at the time, you know this. This is just established fact that in the lead up to the war in Iraq, there was a huge amount of media jingoism in both the UK and the US for the war. And there was a huge amount of coverage. There was a huge amount of justification. In the UK, we had what was known as the Dodgy Dossier.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
Super weapons. People being bumped off in England for no particular reason whatsoever. Big tubes of pipeline. Quite frankly, I looked at those pipelines that were going to make the super gun. They would have had to been a lot thicker barrels for that to have been a super gun. That was oil pipe that they were sending out to Iraq. But no, that was a super gun that was going to be able to shoot American destroyers out of the Persian Gulf without any chance of them being able to defend themselves against this amazing Iraq super weapon. So we must go in and destroy these weapons of mass destruction that, again, Mr. Hans Bricks was out there wandering around Iraq, searching under every single rock, literally searching everywhere, going, I can't find any weapons of mass destruction over here, guys. Are you sure? And America and England are there going, well, we checked the receipts and we're pretty sure we've got them, which was a lie. They didn't have them, and if they were there, they'd been destroyed already or had gone somewhere else, because after the Iraq War was all over, and boy, it was over fast, and there were some wonderful moments. I don't know if anyone remembers the old Iraqi information minister. He was one of my favorite TV comedians for quite a while. Saddam's information minister standing there going, oh yes, our forces, our glorious forces are smashing the Americans in this place and that place, and without seeing clips from the news of just annihilated Iraqi tanks everywhere. And you know, it was quite amusing watching the misinformation at work from the side where we could look at it and see it obviously. Now, we're obviously only seeing one side, and that side that works both ways. But yeah, there was some very, very funny moments there in the very sad situation, which was Iraq getting its ass handed to it and getting bombed back into the 15th century. And bear in mind, Iraq before then was fairly, it wasn't amazingly westernized, but it was actually a fairly pleasant place in the Middle East, pre-90s, and Saddam had relatively kept a functioning country. And once he was gone, well, we started to see sort of a balkanization of various groups. A little group
the shit got above shoe level.
It got knee length. It got up to the knees. It got up to the waist, and now we're up to our necks in it.
Oh man, we really. The Iraq War, I think, is where they crossed the Rubicon as well with public acceptability, because the war in Afghanistan had been going on for 2 years with a relatively high amount of public support.
Yeah.
It was actually quite a popular war at this point, if you can believe it. Again, there was a huge amount of media pretext for it, a huge amount of enthusiasm at the time, even from the leftist press, even from people like CNN, even from people like, you know, you'd see dissent from like the more left end of something like The Guardian, but the mainstream news was still very, at least, neutral on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a couple more donations here. Hollow 1916 has given us this message. He just wanted to say that prospecting and mining companies have said far back as 2010 that Afghanistan is sitting on $3 trillion of mineral wealth. Yes, there is mining there too.
Oh yeah.
And HK 9410 are actually our biggest supporter. Second being Skull, by the way. I just went and checked that through what I can see on Streamlabs.
Thank you both, you guys. Yeah.
Yes, thank you both. And he's saying, loving all the 9/11 memes. Oh, thank you. There's a semi-famous one if you Google Trump CNN 9/11 meme. It ended up on a whole bunch of news sites because people were baffled by a Trump CNN 9/11 meme that I made. But yeah, much appreciated. But yeah, the Iraq War, again, I mentioned the Dodgy Dossier and I mentioned the enthusiasm from the media, but what I was told, especially by people who were in the military at the time of the Iraq War, is the military and military families were told they were going into Iraq to go and kick some ass of the people who did 9/11.
Yeah, no, Iraq was the main pretense of it was we're going to get them for what they did to us at 9/11.
Yeah.
And got nothing to do with 9/11. Nothing whatsoever. That was some guy sat over in Pakistan. What we got out of it? Well, essentially ISIS. Eventually, we stormed through Iraq when the Western world actually sends its actual physical might, tanks, gunships, and all, stealth fighters. The whole freaking works was brought to bear on Iraq. Iraq crumpled in so quickly, it's untrue. They went from having electricity to no electricity. They had radar, then they had no radar. They had fighter jets. They had all their fighter jets literally fled to Iran. Everything that they had was annihilated within days. Baghdad fell, and then we were searching for Saddam. We found him in a little ditch. We hooked him up. We put him on trial, and he died. He got hung.
Yeah, they hung him. Yeah,
and shortly after that, we had a change of regime in America, or change in political leadership in America, I should say. And then Obama came in. And I'm jumping ahead because I'm aware of the time. We've got a fair bit to go as well. And Obama wanted to pull out of Iraq. He was like, "Oh no, we want to get out of the Middle East. We've been in the Middle East for so long. Let's pull out." But with
no. I will say we're an hour in here, so I don't think we need to slow down. I think we were about halfway through where we need to be, really.
Fair enough, because there's okay.
There is a lot to go through. I agree.
There is, because we're going to hit the rise of ISIS, and how it.
Yeah. Not to get too far ahead, but yeah, you are right. What happened here is that the Americans went in without international support. They dropped the pretext of the coalition. They realized they just fucking didn't need all that shit. They didn't need UN resolutions. They didn't need any of that. They just needed to go in and kick some ass. They thought, they hung up their big mission accomplished banner, and they removed the man who actually was keeping the Islamists down. What happened was the opposite of what they were saying. The rhetoric was, like you said, we're going in and taking out Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And it was just the opposite. It was a complete piece of unreality. And it's funny that people can look back now on the lies of the Bush administration and think that the current administration, in making pretext for its wars, isn't lying as heavily. It's like this Dunning-Kruger kind of effect, that they can recognize this, they can recognize all of these lies in the past, but they will not acknowledge the media jingoism and public enthusiasm at the time, and they will not acknowledge that the same thing is being done to them right now. And you're right, but started to be done to them straight away under Obama. Sorry, I'll let you continue now.
Yeah, straight away, Obama. Oh, we're going to pull out of Iraq. We've been there too long. This, that, and the other. Power vacuum on the spot. I mean, I was watching the Top Gear special where they were driving through Iraq in fairly recently, actually, and yeah, oh, it's all fine, Kurdistan, etc., relatively safe. Power vacuum suddenly happens. ISIS suddenly happens, or ISIL as it was at that point. Islamic State in what was it in the Levant. And then it became.
It was, yeah.
And then all of a sudden they snuck into Syria, and it was around about when was it exactly that ISIS suddenly started getting into Syria? It was about 2012, 2013. Was it earlier than that?
Because it was earlier. It was earlier than that. There was a lot of Islamist activity we just weren't being told about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it started to become noticeable. Not as big of a problem as it later became. It started to become noticeable in 2013, 2014. Is really when it started to ramp up. But yeah, 2012, 2013, it must have been there. We just weren't being told about it.
Because there's something interesting that we need to point out again. And I know I'm brutalizing some people who said they would take a drink every time I said oil. But I'm gonna
change.
I'm gonna say it again because around about 2013. Maybe before. 2013 was the first time I saw it announced. Guess what was found in a disputed territory in Syria, as it was known as the Golan Heights. That's right. They found vast amounts of oil in the Golan Heights.
Find vast amounts of oil. Yes, I'll give my take on Obama's entire administration a bit later. But the whole Golan Heights thing is so fascinating because it's something that just isn't talked about. Like it's like an inside baseball kind of people nodding at each other if you start talking about oil in the Golan Heights. Because it gets a bit into the Israel territory, and then the people who are very obsessed with optics start to slowly back away from you, like you're about to open some kind of oven. It's.
I found this was in The Economist back in early 2015. Oh, sorry, it's not late 2015, but I have seen others as well. Yeah, they found a lot of oil under the Golan Heights, sort of the same amount of oil as they found underneath Saudi Arabia, in the Golan Heights, in the disputed territory in Syria. And then all of a sudden we ended up with ISIS all over Syria and an attempt at a whole new civil war going off.
A whole new war.
It's all new. It's all new, and it's all the same. That's right. And now recently, I believe, wasn't the Golan Heights recently gifted by America to? Oh, that's right, Israel. Even though it wasn't theirs to gift, it was Syria's. Yeah. No, America went, no, actually Israel gets that. And nobody mentioned the vast amounts of oil that was under there, and the prospecting that's being done there by a... where's the company? I had it here a minute ago. There's a company, basically, that has all the rights to all the oil there, and it's an American-Israeli company. Who'd have guessed that, huh?
Well, we'll get to some of this stuff later because it gets very gets a little spicier in a little bit, guys. The spice levels will ramp up.
Genie Energy, that's the one. Genie Energy. They have all that rights. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I don't know. Something on what came over me. Yes. Anyway,
it's the groundwork laying.
Islamists in Syria, nothing to do with oil, right?
This all essentially took place on Obama's watch, though.
Yes,
all the pretext for this did.
Yes.
Obama's legacy is ISIS, and you talked about him leaving a power vacuum. It wasn't as simple as the fact that he drew. Like the narrative is, especially with the neocons, that Obama drew down troop numbers, and that was the mistake. If only they'd surged troops sooner. By the way, Obama was the person responsible for the troop surge as well, which supposedly fixed the problem, but didn't. All it did was further commit the US to babysitting these nations. Obama ran on a platform of closing Guantanamo Bay, which he didn't do. He just flat out fucking didn't.
No. In fact, he filled it up.
He increased its occupancy. He ran on a platform of pulling out of Iraq and Afghanistan, which he didn't do. He drew down troop numbers a bit. He shuffled them around. In fact, Obama's troop surge, a lot of it was pulled out of Afghanistan, which then led to a lot of the British deaths in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
The Obama administration's focus on Iraq was at the detriment of their mission in Afghanistan. And I don't agree with these wars. I don't agree with the pretext for them. I don't agree with this brand of interventionism in general, if you can't tell. But if they were going to do it, they should have at least done it properly. The worst thing about the Obama administration is they didn't pull out, but they didn't stay in. They went for this middle ground that was the worst of both worlds. And in hindsight, it almost feels like a deliberate destabilization of the region because they hadn't accomplished what they wanted with the invasions.
I mean, only half pulling out and not doing it completely. That leaves nobody happy. I mean, you're either balls deep or you're on the tits, really, aren't you? Sorry, couldn't help myself. But yeah, no, exactly. It was half in, half out, and no one was happy about the whole situation. No one was pleased. And yeah, England ended up taking a lot more. I was
going to say, Trig, real men can hit the face from there, but... Yeah. Sorry.
Touche, sir. Touche.
You gotta believe. I can see our viewers dropping as we continue to chuckle at our own semen jokes. This is the standard of pan kind of Middle East history you get from us. It all just ends up in cum jokes. But yeah, no, you're right. It was a solution that pleased nobody, but it also, in hindsight, it feels like a deliberate attempt to destabilize the region. But I won't credit Obama with being that clever. I just think they were stuck in a situation and they were just incompetent and handled it badly. I do think it allowed some of the special interest stuff to take place, though, and it also allowed a lot of the private industry and a lot of the PMC stuff, especially, accelerated massively.
Yeah.
Under Obama, as did the policy of drone strikes.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it. Obama dropped. In fact, I remember having arguments about this, but people going, "Oh, Obama was wonderful. He was nowhere near as bad as the warmonger Bush." And I was like, "He did more drone strikes than Bush by a long way." But that's not bombs. I was like, "Well, no, it is exactly bombs. What do you think they're dropping?" Yeah, no, Obama blew the crap out of the Middle East, and somehow a lot of the left seemed to think he was some sort of peacemaker. No, he was blowing the living daylights out of the poor bastards. Yeah, he was an absolute monster. And supplying, of course, let's not forget, supplying those friendly insurgents like al-Nusra, etc. That because they're going to fight against ISIS. Oh no, actually they're ISIS. Oops, our mistake. We seem to have given, a couple of £1 million worth of weapons to ISIS again.
Oopsie-doopsie.
And so many times, so many cases of that happening. Almost, once could be a mistake. Twice, carelessness. 3 or 4 times, I'm beginning to wonder whether they were doing it on purpose. Whether or not, ISIS was there for... It's funny how the moment he was out of power and Trump was in power, it took us a matter of months to completely annihilate ISIS, take out their leadership, and suddenly they disappeared from general consciousness. I mean, they were gone within, was it 6 months of Trump being in power?
Oh god, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, but I put an image, again, in the stream resources there from, it's actually from The Independent, which is funny because Obama was essentially their guy. It's amazing the transformation in public imagination from Obama in 2008 to Obama in 2016. Because they kind of got it, but they only said it out loud when it was too late to affect anything. They did everything in their power to get Obama elected twice, even though what you will see here is a complete continuation of Bush-era policy. Someone got very offended with me when I said that Obama was just the Bush administration part 2, but domestic policy-wise, financial policy-wise, and foreign policy-wise, it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was the real telltale of the neocon, neolib, the face changes, but the administration, the deep state remains the same. And that's what it really is. This is a war of the deep state, of the intelligence state, and of the largely kind of publicly funded U.S. defense industry. It is not something. It is a real tell that the establishment is in charge and not whatever people vote for. Because once we got to the Obama administration, the luster had worn off. These were massively unpopular wars by this point. Obama would have been, even if Iraq and Afghanistan had collapsed, just by pulling the troops out of harm's way and saying, enough is enough, we can't do this, we're going to have to do what happened in, what we did in Vietnam and say, cut our losses, we're leaving. Yeah. We can't have an open-ended war. And the thing is, the Vietnam War traumatized the American nation in certain ways. It made them quite shy of interventionism, but in terms of length of time and in terms of time commitment, at least, I mean, number of troops is different, number of losses is certainly different. But Vietnam felt like a Sunday lunch compared to what's still going on in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
That is a war that actually did end kind of within a decade in terms of at least the major active service there. I mean, we're in our second decade of this latest round of forever wars now.
The other thing is with regards to Vietnam, Vietnam was at the time a French protectorate. The South Vietnam were asking for police aid and police action, and America was providing that. They were actually asked to go in there. They wanted to be in there. Well, nobody wanted them in Syria. Syria certainly didn't. The only people that may have wanted the US in Syria is one of the US's neighbors, maybe, who may be concerned that they weren't going to get that oil. Or, I mean, the terrorism might slip across the border into their land. But it certainly wasn't, nobody wanted them there. Certainly nobody in that area, apart from one, maybe, country, wanted them there. But yeah, no, it was... How many people have we lost? How many casualties? How many lives ruined? How many people disfigured, maimed, traumatized, etc.? I mean, it's countless. How many people have to come home in body, but how many people have to come home in pieces and still have to live what is left of their life with one arm and one leg missing? I know it's like that scene in the beginning of Starship Troopers. Mobile infantry made me the man I am today, says the guy with no legs and no arms.
It is a small number compared to other wars that have happened, but America between Afghanistan and Iraq still lost, like, what is it? I think it's 6,700 if I'm combining these right. So it's nearly 7,000 deaths over this period, which is a lot of people for a supposedly limited deployment. That's a lot of for a deployment and not a quote unquote full scale war. That's, it's small change compared to like World War II, but it's still a noticeable difference. And the thing is, the human cost in terms of civilians is often, categorized at the millions, possibly, because of the destabilization of the country. Like these are activities that have cost, thousands of professional soldiers and possibly millions of civilian lives. It's really hard to count the cost, because a lot of people have a lot of motivation to both under and over report them. Yeah. But the big takeaway here is that these aren't just limited operations.
No, let's not forget.
This is ruining many, many, many people. Yeah, KD ratio though, of course. What happens when
But Bataclan, trucks of peace. Terrorists happening through Europe, the refugee crisis, etc., etc. I could go on and on and on. How many civilians lost? Well, all over Europe by terrorists that have been driven out of the Middle East, up through Turkey, literally released across the border by Turkey as well. Thank you, Turkey.
Maliciously, with intent. They say it. They will tell you they did that.
Yeah, that has ravaged, raped and pillaged their way through Europe for the last 10, 15 years. Yeah, no, it is untold. I mean, sure, 7,000 professional soldiers, that's 7,000 fathers have lost their sons. That's 7,000 mothers have had to cry and grieve at the loss of their sons and daughters. But that's almost minor in comparison to, the untold disaster that has been the refugee crisis throughout Europe. That is all a result of this. All of it is a result of this.
The thing is, if you believe the rhetoric in 2008, Obama could have pulled the troops out like that, and he should have done with his election promises. Maybe. That's what he promised. Instead, again, he got the surge. He instead of stopping war, he waged war. He really became the custodian of those wars. We'll get to the Trump administration in a bit, because I don't have a huge amount to say about that. Actually, it's just it's mainly a case of that it's further proof that the president doesn't run the country.
You say that. I don't know.
Excuse me.
Trump knocked the crap. Trump dropped. He literally went, okay, what's the biggest bomb that's about to lose its sell-by date? Okay, great. Drop that on them, scare the crap out of them. And where's this bastard? What was his name? I've forgotten the head of ISIS's name.
Oh, yeah, no, who you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, and that was it. He was done. 2 operations, and suddenly ISIS is all over, and there's rumblings and noise, but pretty much it's been quiet for the last 4 years.
We also stopped arming them as well. We also stopped arming them was the big thing. We're only giving guns to the good rebels. Yeah, pull the fucking other one. Al-Baghdadi, yeah.
Al-Baghdadi, thank you. Yes, my brain just suddenly went.
He wasn't as meaningful as people made out, but yeah, he was. It kind of became a case of the Trump administration stopped arming them. Which again, if you look at what Obama did, Obama's big war was the operation in Libya. That's not something he inherited. That's something he did.
Oh yeah.
And again, that was it. They didn't make the mistake of putting active troops on the ground, but they still managed to successfully destabilize a country and back an essentially Islamist militia to take it over. And again, removed a shit at shoe level strongman. Be it one that was actually probably more troublesome in Gaddafi because he was linked to things like the was it the Lockerbie bombings?
The Lockerbie bombings was definitely Libya. We said okay, yes, there was that, and there have been some issues with Gaddafi, but again, Libya was an oil producing country. As a result, it was wealthy. They had universities. They had thriving cities. They had women not wearing complete ninja outfits going to university. It was actually remarkably liberal country, considering it was the Middle East.
Scarves, yeah.
No, it was a liberal, thriving, nearly first world country on the Mediterranean. I know somebody who was working in an oil field in Libya back in the 90s, and as far as he was concerned, it was a wonderful country to live in. Yeah, it was fine. You could go out, you could go to nightclubs, you could drink, you could party, you could have fun. It was a great country. And Obama got in, and as Hillary said, we came, we saw, he died. And they sodomized him to death with a knife, you know that?
Yeah.
It was a horrendous way to go. And again, I've got a soft spot for, flamboyant Middle East dictators with a taste for big shades, etc. They're funny. I've always liked, and Gaddafi was a good cartoonish bad guy. Now we've got ISIS cutting people's heads off all of a sudden. Now we've got slave blocks in Libya.
Well, yeah, we do have slave blocks in Libya. The big thing with Libya is, cynically now, it feels like Gaddafi was removed to give the refugee crisis an extra vector.
Yeah.
Because the Eastern European companies were getting sick of it. It really, really accelerated the whole migrant boats thing. It was really... Libya was done and then Syria was intensified, and Europe was intentionally... Like there's no other way to say it, intentionally flooded with refugees. A lot of which claimed to be from Syria, most of which were either Somali, Turkish, Libyan, or generally from countries that are, if not safe, then not in an active state of war. The big, like I said, Libya is the big tell, but then we get on to Obama's bombings in Syria, because you saw in that image we put up earlier that he dropped as many bombs in 2016 on Syria as he did on Iraq. Which, again, they were fighting ISIS at that point. They'd kind of gone back into Iraq. They'd never actually left. They pretended to leave. They hadn't actually left. They'd handed some stuff over to the security forces there. But yeah, they'd never actually left Iraq or Afghanistan. It's yeah.
Sorry, I had to slip. That's great. I love that one.
We'll get into those. But yes. We're going to cover that with the Biden stuff, because the Biden stuff really has this veneer of the culture war about it. It has this veneer of LGBT rights, rainbow bombs, and that's kind of where we are now.
Yeah.
But you must understand, to get to there, we got through the Obama administration, which again, different face, same wars. Once we get out of the Bush administration, the narrative of the traditional left and the narrative of the traditional quote-unquote anti-war people breaks down. And you really begin to see that people who protest war as professional activists are useless, because they would shill for someone like Obama, who anyone who was a political kind of insider or someone who was a bit more aware than, an NGO worker or someone with an Amnesty International sticker would know that someone like Obama was never going to end the forever wars. It seems obvious because of all the people behind him, the war hawks like Hillary, people like Biden. The administration has too much to gain from their, strategic interests. The reasons they invaded these countries never went away. The people underneath in the deep state never went away. The military-industrial complex never changed. It was obvious to anyone who had a functioning brain at the time and who'd been around for a while that this was just going to continue. Oh dear. Sorry, I think we're kind of we're getting out of the Obama administration now. Finally,
we are. I'm just. I found an article here. It's billions of barrels of Israeli oil tapped in the Golan Heights. Article written in 2015, whilst the Golan Heights was still part of Syria. Israeli oil. Funnily enough, it is now Israel.
Yeah, Israeli oil.
Anyway, nothing to do with why we were fighting a conflict in Syria, I'm sure. Sorry, oil. Whoever out there is drinking every time I say oil, oil.
Craig, you're just doing it on purpose now. Don't kill somebody, Christ.
He doesn't have to be drinking alcohol.
Okay, right. Well, the case is, what the Obama administration did was they were softening up Libya for an invasion.
Yes.
And they were arming the quote-unquote good rebels, and they were essentially doing what they did with the Mujahideen. They were arming ISIS. It was obvious what they were doing. This is the early stage of what was going on in Syria. I'm sure you all know this, you were all around for it, but the point should be that both Libya and Syria were Obama's wars, and Syria never quite turned into a hot war under Obama, but Hillary was supposed to win, and Hillary was supposed to invade the shit out of Syria. That was what was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
But instead, we got Trump. And that really kind of put a pause on the forever wars for 4 years. Because as we learned with a lot of these stuff at the end of his term, they lied to him about troop numbers in Syria. He told them to have 0 troops in Syria, and they proudly lied to him, but like they were continuing this great mission, this great thread we've seen from Bush Senior and the adjustments at the end of the Cold War. That was their rhetoric, that they, Trump was a madman for doing this, and they were simply carrying on normal policy. We'll see in all of this that the forever wars are seen as a function of normality.
Yep.
More than anything.
Commander-in-Chief. The literally military commanders disobeyed their commander-in-chief. That's how useful democracy is these days, it seems.
It is, but it really is. Here we go. I'll link it here if you get it up on stream. But outgoing Syria envoy admits hiding U.S. troop numbers from Trump. Even as he praised his Middle Eastern record. It's amazing. It's amazing that this wasn't reported on more widely. But he did. He's American. Yeah, he just lied. He was told to pull troops out and he didn't, and just lied about it.
Yep.
It's incredible that this happened and there wasn't an amazing outcry from the supposedly anti-war parts of the what is essentially the establishment.
Because they're not anti-war.
Yeah, they're not. They're not anti-war, and they are the establishment. That's the big thing.
What was it? A week or two into Biden's presidency, big fat contract to Raytheon.
Yes.
A couple of weeks later, bombs into Syria.
But the thing you will take away here from the Bush administration into the Obama administration, there's continuity. Yeah. That continuity ends with Trump. He doesn't manage to end the forever wars, but he really gums up the kind of the machinery, and he doesn't invade Syria. He does limited bombing operations in Syria in response to what he was essentially told to do. Yep. Like there was a massive outcry that he didn't take more action in Syria, which is funny. It's
Syria's been quiet for 4 years, basically. Big bomb again, and then takes out al-Baghdadi. Russians cleared up the rest of it.
Well, it was the Russians came in and they backed. Well, we're getting back to Bashar al-Assad. Yeah. Bashar al-Assad was brought up again. He was the next quote-unquote dictator. Spoiler, he really wasn't. He wasn't a Gaddafi. He wasn't a Saddam. He was not a madman. He was a tribal leader from a smaller tribe of a ruling class that is part of Syria's establishment that was really put there by the British. He is not a mad dog dictator.
Oh, no.
He looks like a fucking maths teacher.
That was his dad, though. That was his dad, because Bashar al-Assad was educated, university educated, came to England, was studying to be a dentist, for God's sakes. Married an attractive British lady. For a while, they were actually calling her the Princess Diana of the Middle East, of the Mediterranean. Yeah, literally absolute darling of the world. Yeah, they couldn't stop saying nice things about Bashar al-Assad's wife, and looks like a lovely lady. All of a sudden, that changes in the early 2000s. All of a sudden, because of a chemical weapons attack, which is really suspect. And then they tried that again, and every time they've tried that, it's like, why would this country that is not known for doing this sort of thing do this sort of thing when he knows damn well it's going to give the whole of the Western world a reason to come in and kick his ass when he's already doing well? There's no need. Again,
they even use the weapons of mass destruction lie again.
Yeah.
They even use the Syria has chemical weapons because it's a well-known fact that they never found the WMDs in Iraq. They never found the ISIS. Not the ISIS. The Al Qaeda. That was the old branding. It wasn't New Coke yet. They never found the Al Qaeda bases. They were expecting to find in Iraq, or they led people to believe they were expecting to find. I don't think they ever were retarded enough to sniff their own farts and think that Al Qaeda was operating with impunity in Iraq, because it never was.
No, it wasn't. The Kurds killed them up north, and they were not welcome in Iraq. That's why they were all the way across Iran in Afghanistan, because Iran was more friendly to Al Qaeda and so on than Iraq was.
Tentatively, yes. And it's a case of geopolitics. It's a case of you can think what you want about the Forever Wars, but you at least must acknowledge that a lot of what is said about them is propaganda from an objective degree, especially during the tenures of people like Obama, who are the man won a Nobel Peace Prize, and he dropped more bombs than any president, outside of total war after World War II. It's madness that the public narrative was as it was about Obama. Because it turned out the real peacemaker was fucking Trump, which is funny.
The Abraham Accords, the attempts with North Korea. How many peace deals did he sign across the Middle East? Loads of them.
Yeah, he did. Mainly involving Israel, but we'll gloss that aside.
You know what? No, let's not, because what he did was he got a load of countries that historically have hated Israel's guts to sign peace treaties with Israel. That's actually worthy of note. Now, those are all probably going to go out the window fairly rapidly now, but that is worthy of note that people went, you know what, we're not going to go to war with Israel. We'll sign the paper. Sure, Israel. There are reasons to have issues with Israeli politics in the Middle East and the troubles they've caused, but actually worthy of note to say, okay, these countries that originally, Saudi Arabia wanted Israel to be built in Germany. It was like, no, keep them out of here. We don't want them down here. Let them build Israel in Germany. That's where all the mess happened. That's why then they need a homeland. That's why the Jews are displaced. Let's set up Israel in Germany. And everyone laughed and went, yeah, Saudis, you're so funny. Now give us your oil. Just sign there. Just sign there and you can go back to your tent. There we go. Literally, the guy was living in a tent. I'm not even joking.
Oh, man. That is very funny. No, it's true though. That is, oh god, the early kind of history of oil extraction in the Middle East is a whole other thing that
Yeah.
we can talk about and laugh about. But yeah, this is the situation we find ourselves in at the end. Well, we found ourselves in at the end of the Trump administration. There had been 4 years of establishment chaos. They decided to fix the election. The election was fixed. No one can pretend otherwise. In fact, they're still. We'll probably go over this at some point again. We'll do a set rip on the situation with the legal cases. But there's been a whole bunch of just shit thrown out posthumously.
Yep.
With elections all over the U.S. So much of the voting changes have been declared illegal. But again, that's a separate subject. But yeah, the situation we found ourselves in at the end of the Trump administration, beginning of the Biden administration, is it's back to business as usual. The forever wars will continue, and the establishment has reasserted itself. If you want to, now we can get into my my slightly spicier slides. You can get the shall we get the LGBT slide up, because we're in a very tolerant time now. This is an LGBT friendly administration, and I think we all know what that means. We all know what LGBT stands for.
That's right.
What does it stand for, Trig?
Let's go bomb tailheads. That's what it means. That's what it stands for. Yeah, yeah. But you know, it is. Let's be fair. Black female vice president, guys. It's an honor to be bombed by someone like that.
It's a rainbow bomb with components made in Israel and assembled in America. It's a very, very patriotic, very tolerant, very inclusive, very multicultural bomb.
The gay bomb's real, guys. The gay bomb's real. Look in San Francisco. The gay bomb's real.
I know there's a woman who was ripped apart on Twitter. I think, yeah, you are right about that, though. No. That is a spicy sandwich. I also put the Fed logo on there for good measure.
Should have put the eye in the pyramid on it somewhere as well.
No, I didn't want to turn it into the full David D's. You know, I'm trying to go D's light here.
It's maybe in the corner looking down over the whole thing. Maybe.
Yeah. A 5G tower as well. I'll get fucking keyworded by Google for that. That'll be what I guess is demonetized. It's. I know there was. Again, I don't have it to hand, but there was a whole bunch of check marks who were made fun of by saying that it was a polite bombing of Syria. They were so glad the grown-ups were back in the room.
It's a polite bombing, you know, just a few maimed children and people. It's fine. It's just a nice reminder that, you know, the adults are back in charge. Not that rude orange man. Guys. Yeah.
It's an inclusive bombing. It's a very LGBT friendly bombing. You know, that bombing was done by a very diverse group of people. Like I said, it's a rainbow coalition of bombings. Again, that's really where we find ourselves. We have Bush Jr. level forever wars still, but with the new layer of kind of Biden administration acceptability. Of, you know, it's a rainbow veneer over the same foreign policy. There is a direct line between the Bush Senior, it went through the Clinton administration, Bush Jr., through Obama, got disrupted by Trump, and now we're back exactly. Yeah, here we are. We're now exactly where we were. And the B in LGBT definitely stands for bombs.
It does when it's Lockheed Martin. I mean, they do nothing but make fighter jets and explosives and weapons.
Yeah. I mean, it's fair enough, you know. I know defense contractors have to exist. I've done work adjacent to them before. Most states have them, or at least every state buys from them. But it's just so incongruous having people that, you know, manufacture the means for Obama to drone strike the Yemeni weddings, for them to have a pride parade. Like I said, it literally rainbow veneer over bombs. It's like all the memes of the tolerant drone strikes. And again, they really do put out this rhetoric that it matters. It matters the tone with which you murder people. That is the message from the Biden administration. That really was the message again from the Obama administration too. You know, if you like that, you'll love this kind of thing. It's like it's Obama Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. Except with a senile old man, they have the CGI into images.
Yeah.
Fucking.
Oh, I'm going to have to move off Lockheed Martin because otherwise I'm going to start ranting about F-35s and how it should have been. It should have been the
What a piece of
Boeing.
shit.
It should have been the Boeing X-32.
What a piece of shit. The F-35 is a what is it, $2 trillion money hole at this point?
At least, it can't fight, it can't run, it can't hide, it can't turn. It's underpowered. It's just on every front, and they've just admitted it recently as well.
Yeah, they really just have admitted it recently. It's
They shouldn't have got rid of the Harriers, guys. The Harriers were great.
The Harriers were great. I agree with you, but yeah, we've kind of just touched the surface here, really. And again, this is the situation we find ourselves in now. But I really wanted to go into the fact that no matter what anyone tells you, no matter what agenda anyone presents, no matter what anyone campaigns on, if the establishment is in charge, the forever wars will continue.
Mm-hmm.
They will put a veneer over it. They will call it different things. But the plan is, like you said, to build pipelines to the Middle East. It's a Western Belt and Road that is run through the handshaking of the neolibs and the neocons. It doesn't matter which color you vote for. To go back to the infinite crab bucket, if you guys remember that callback, since that was quite a popular stream. It doesn't matter what color your bucket is. The crabs will still be sent out into the sand to die. I think I made that joke in that one too.
You're absolutely right, and it is, and it does not matter. It is either way, and as you say, it goes back. It is all about getting oil from the Middle East, pumping all of the oil out of the Middle East as fast as possible, and not have it go through Russia. Because certain oil companies have been salty for the past 100 years about Russia and about losing the Caspian oil fields. And it really does boil down to let's pump the oil through Turkey, through Greece, which is why they were let into the EU, even though they didn't actually qualify, and up into Germany that way, rather than Germany being dependent on Russia for their energy, and not just Germany, but the rest of Europe as well, because that's where the oil is coming from. It's coming from Russia, and they don't want to give Russia that power. Even though, to be perfectly honest, I'd rather Russia have the power than the Middle East. And I'd certainly rather have the power than China. And while Biden's busy kissing China's arse and calling Putin a murderer. Just today. So, work it out. I mean, Russia, yes, they have weaponry. But by and large, economically, they're not a threat. Culturally, actually, they're very basically European. Certainly, West Russia is. And bear in mind, Russia goes all the way over to China. Is that big old country?
Before we get into the kind of the outro stuff here, there's a little aspect I want to talk about that we missed here, which was part of the intensification of operations in Syria was a response to the Ukraine. The Ukraine operations that the Russians undertook that humiliated the West. They were outplayed 100% by Putin. Whatever you think of the man, he just completely destroyed any illusion of, Western hegemonic power by taking back Crimea and saying there is nothing you can do about this. And guess what? There was nothing they could do about it. They couldn't do a damn thing when he took back Crimea, because
no, they didn't. They could have done something about it. They didn't want to. What was really disgusting me about that whole situation, with all the let the poor refugees in from Iraq and from Turkey and from Syria, the poor Syrian refugees. Only a few years before that, whilst that was going off in Crimea, we'd got all the Ukrainian. Hot blonde Ukrainian women wanting to seek safety in the West, in Europe. You know what happened then? What happened when a similar culture was trying to seek refuge in Europe? You know what they said? They said no.
Well, again, this is the fruit of the globalist games. Ukraine is essentially really, and Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan, all of these are victims of globalized policy that is supposed to keep us safer, supposed to save lives, and supposed to protect interests. And it doesn't. It never does. All it does is create this cycle of like internationalist violence. It's almost like some sort of international fucking gang war, where the only real victory is to protect your borders, to be internally secure, and to really, as much as humanly possible, stay out of other people's business. Because all it leads to is a forever war. And you will be forever spending blood and treasure and political capital on a dusty shithole that really has no value, chasing a literal pipe dream.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. It's a literal it's a pipeline dream. But they're after here. And they've been after it since the end of the Cold War.
Yep. No, the whole thing makes me... It makes me very, very angry. In fact, here you go. Have an Alex expressing exactly how I feel about this whole freaking thing. It makes me livid. We are fighting and dying. People are losing bits of themselves and lives being lost over nonsense. Over oil that is actually worthless, that has an inflated value. Over power and violence for no real reason. If we'd left the Middle East alone, they would have gone on with their own thing and done their own thing quite happily for the last 30, 40 years. But no, we've had interventionism, we've had, all manner of nonsense, and it has just got worse and worse and worse.
If you don't involve yourself in the mess isn't your fault. Like, I know a lot of this is leftovers of empire, and it's just, it's the sunk cost fallacy is what it is. It's they thought that they could protect their interest by just committing a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. But it's borne out in reality that, this is bad foreign policy. Yeah. If they want to accrue power, this is a bad, it's not really a good way to accrue power in the long run. Because it leads to domestic and international collapse.
It's horrendous. Iran, pre-1970s Iran, pre-1970s Afghanistan, pre-1970s Beirut and Lebanon. All of these areas. Before certain things happened, before certain people were put in place for various reasons to destabilize the area, these places were lovely. These places were thriving. They were almost as advanced, if not as advanced, as Europe at the time.
Well, let's not forget that Iran used to be one of the most Western-friendly nations in the Middle East, and the Ayatollah was a reaction to the perceived, over-Western meddling in Iran.
The Ayatollah was put in there by America. Prove me wrong. Really, literally,
culturally, the cultural force behind that, though, was the fact that they felt that their country had become a surrogate nation for, Western ideas and Western business, and that they didn't run their own. It was the same thing, really, that put Castro in power when they turned, they turned Cuba basically into a giant casino and handed it largely over to the mob.
Yeah.
It's the same impetus there. It's just, if you leave people alone, generally they will leave you alone. And if they won't leave you alone,
then slap them.
Make them come and get you.
Yeah. if they're going to come, if they're going to attack, bring it on. Yeah, is what I would say. If they want to attack, fine. But if you're leaving them alone, and they suddenly start attacking you, then you know who's in the right and who's in the wrong. It gets very clear cut and so on. If you're sat there fucking around, meddling, regime changing, and generally screwing with people and putting religious zealots in charge of countries and having people end up getting beheaded and causing religious wars, causing wars between neighbors, etc., for years and years and years, and then they start getting salty with you when they realize you've been doing, guess who's in the wrong? Everybody is in the wrong at that point.
Yes.
There are no good guys anymore.
Before we start winding down and I'm going to do a little bit of shilling at the end here as well. I've got back into Streamlabs, guys. It seems to be a problem with Streamlabs. I can see people who've donated, but I can't see their messages. So I'll probably put out a little community post later for any people's message that I've missed. So please, like I said, if you want to send a super chat, please do. We will read them before the end of the stream. because like I said, we have completely sorted our YouTube monetization now, which is very nice. But yeah, the one thing I will say on all of this is I want to go back a little bit further because a lot of interventionism is predicated on rhetoric from the Second World War. That if we hadn't gone and got Hitler, you would have all been speaking German right now. A lot of the Western interventionist rhetoric and spirit comes from that. It comes from what is considered the last righteous war, which, if you study world history, really, it is not like we could do 10 streams on the lies you have been told about World War II, and the propaganda that is still perpetuated. You are taught the propaganda version of World War II, not the real version of World War II.
Yes.
But a lot of the
I saw this the other day, and it really, really struck home with me. Actually, it's a really good phrase. If you've realised that the fake news is now, think about how much history is fake. Think about how much of what you've read in books and all of that lot isn't actually what actually happened. It is fake news throughout the history, over and over again repeated, and there is ways to decipher it, and historians have tried, by and large, to decipher an accurate picture of the past, but it's always the victor writes the history, and
I need to find it somewhere, because there's a great clip of someone calling into Rush Limbaugh when he was being very jingoistic about the Forever Wars, basically saying that America doesn't spread democracy; it just spreads American interest and degeneracy, which I think is quite funny and kind of based to tell fucking Rush Limbaugh. Oh dear, it is the case though. It's there's a lot of different things we could get into here, but I will just punctuate this by saying that you can just end the Forever Wars. You can just leave.
Yeah.
Oh dear, conspiracy theory. Yes, that's good.
Sorry.
But anyway. Enough of that. I'm gonna say what am
I apologizing for? I'm not apologizing. I apologize for nothing. I'm happy, proud of it.
we have some links in the description. You can go visit. We have a minds.com. I will starting next week, have a membership program for my YouTube channel if you guys want to support us through that.
Yeah, I was going to wonder if you're going to mention that. Yes.
Do go join us on Minds. I post on Minds every day. It is a good social media platform. It is very welcoming. It's the only thing it's not good for is normie hunting, but I don't really miss that. It is a much better place for discoverability. There's lots of artists, lots of photographers. I use it generally for non-political content, honestly, which is a great endorsement of the platform in general, because it's not like Gab Wars and it's not like Parler Wars. It is a genuinely good social media experience. So please do join us on Minds.
I love the way you speak about Parler and Gab in the past tense. They do still exist, but they're
dead to me.
Cancer.
They're dead to me.
Yeah. Same.
As always, down below there is a link to my Discord. I know a lot of you come from there, but some of you might not. So my Discord is also linked in the top of my YouTube channel as well. If you want to point people to that, it is a generally open Discord. I don't shill it too many places. It does have an open invite at the moment, but that may change in the future if it gets raided or flooded. Do keep an eye on that. But yeah, there is an invite down below to my Discord server. It's pretty chill at the moment. Do you have anything you want to shill, Trig?
No, again, I mean, I know there's some people come over from Cabal, because that's somewhere where, when I'm not hanging around in my Discord server, which no one can get into without an invite personally from me, and you're not getting in.
That is a private Discord server.
It's literally like Cartman's, I own a fun fair and you can't come type situation. But Cabal is a fun place where I tend to hang out a bit occasionally. I know some guys come from there, and hopefully touch wood. I know I've said this several times, and it's only it's not actually happened and been streamed, but I'm supposed to be doing a D&D on Sundays. Just never seems to have. It's happened, I think, once so far, and it started happening again the other week and then got cut short, but hopefully that should start getting streamed or recorded or both in the very near future, and you can watch me play a sort of psychotic gun Geralt in that. But other than that, no, not yet. Nothing to report here yet. Yet.
But yes, thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for everyone who donated. Thank you to HK 9410. Thank you to Scousfish, Hollow 1916, and Commentary 301. And the last person who donated, I can't actually see because I'd show you on the back end, but the the viewer activity stuff, it says no super chats or members yet. So YouTube's back end is bugging out, which is nice of it. But yes,
Great.
Yeah, thank you, thank you for joining, and we will see you next time.
Take it easy. Goodbye.